It's really an honor to be here, and when Pat told me she was being inducted into the Hall of Fame, I said, I didn't know you played baseball. When I met Pat Milton, when she came to CBS in 2008, she was this dynamic woman. I felt a kind of kindred spirit. We were both about the same height. We both loved Hermes scarves and bracelets. We both seemed energized by almost any story. But what really amused me, she had no off switch. You could catch her first thing in the morning, you could catch her at midnight. It was all the same, overdrive. She has 6 Emmy nominations under her belt and 1 stone cold win. I thought to myself, I'm gonna stick close to this woman. She could actually make things happen. When I was the senior executive producer of 48 Hours, she didn't have to be nice to us. We were kind of low on the totem pole. Just ask anybody at 60 Minutes. That doesn't tell. Did I say something? I'm sorry. I forgot. Is this on the record or off?
It's okay, it's okay.
Okay.
You're clear.
Yeah, clear. Hope you didn't read the New York Post today. People are laughing because they know. Seriously, it didn't tell half the story. If I needed something checked out in the intelligence community, I would find Pat, whatever the hour. I would wake Pat up. She would insist she wasn't sleeping. It was only 3 a.m. I know you were sleeping. When I began spending real time with Pat, we were doing a documentary for Showtime called The Spy Masters, CIA in the Crosshairs. It was a very dynamic film. We got all 12 living directors to participate in this film about how far the CIA should go to protect Americans. Was waterboarding really a good idea? It was a remarkable film. We got access to the CIA for one reason, Pat. And I must say, it is one of the finest films on the CIA in years. I think Newsweek called it the closest thing to a reconciliation, Pat. But when I really started to learn about her backstory, well, it was shock and awe. Not to claim a phrase from a former war. Pat is the ultimate badass. A lawyer licensed to practice in both New York and Washington, which I had not known. And I learned that she opened up, and the AP table is on the side, she opened up the first AP bureau on Long Island. And when she started the bureau, UPI had 26 radio stations around here. 1 year later, they dumped them all, because AP wiped their clock. In our business, stories have an impact on you. Sometimes they haunt you for the rest of your life. During Pat's tenure at AP on Long Island, in 1993, most people will remember this, Colin Ferguson pulled out a 9mm pistol and started shooting. He murdered 6 people and wounded 19. Dennis McCarthy was one man who was killed, his son gravely injured. But his wife, Caroline, would go on to run for Congress and win, and fought hard on the anti-gun laws. The Shoreham nuclear plant, the demonstrations were unbelievable. It was a hot mess, pun intended. But eventually, it did lead to Governor Cuomo shutting it down. Like TWA Flight 800 went down over Long Island. We were just talking about how many months we covered it. Was it a bomb? Was it a missile? No one knew. It turned out to be mechanical. But that broadcast and Pat's work was nominated for a Pulitzer Prize. Pat wrote a book, In the Blink of an Eye, telling the inside story of the FBI's investigation into Flight 800 and its crash. Katie Beers, abducted by a neighbor and kept in a bunker, she would survive and thrive. No one can cover stories like this and not be impacted. And I believe much of Pat's sensibility and sensitivity to the world was shaped by those stories that she covered during her Associated Press days. Then came CBS, and the power of Pat. I have a name for it. I call it Pop. She came into high gear. When something breaks, you start to see these emails and, you know, on every device from Pat, reportable, not reportable, almost reportable, absolutely reportable. Her sources in law enforcement are impeccable. Notes flying through the CBS system are depended upon for every single person at the network. We go live based on Pat's report. I think Pat actually abides by David Martin, our Pentagon correspondence rule, is you want to be exclusive for 10 minutes. Because if it's more than 10 minutes, you may not be right. Just kidding. That is David Martin.
It's true.
From the Paris, Pat's been involved in every major story, from the Paris terrorist attacks, Sandy Hook massacre, the capture of Mexican drug lord El Chapo, Colorado theater shootings, the Boston Marathon bombings. She earned an Emmy for coverage of that tragic event. The FBI actually allowed Pat special access into how they caught, I can't remember his name, Sonora. They gave it to Pat. I actually wanted it for 48 hours, but it went to 60 minutes. No shot. Am I bitter or hostile? No. Exclusives? That was Pat's specialty. FBI Director James Comey, CIA Director Brennan, and most recently, Pat tracked the drug fentanyl with producer Bob Anderson from the streets of Wisconsin to its roots in China. It was an extraordinary story. Pat inspires her colleagues. Pat is selfless. There's a Shakespeare quote, which I think actually fits you just to a T. And though she be but little, she is fierce. Pat, I am honored to be your friend, and I am honored to be able to talk about you tonight. Congratulations on your baseball award.
Ladies and gentlemen, here to introduce Long Island Journalism Hall of Fame inductee Pat Milton is her associate and friend,
Thank you very much. It's an honor also to follow the boss. I was always told that's a good idea. Follow the boss. We wish Susan the best at CBS. My wife Susie and I are thrilled to join in the celebration tonight, honoring a dear friend and frankly one of the best reporters in the business. I've known her more than 20 years, but actually I have to say I ran into her byline first. I came here, as you heard, to cover TWA 800 in 1996, and I thought at the time I had pretty good sources on the aviation beat. But then my bosses started asking me a question. Why are we getting stooped by the AP? Time and time again I was confronted by the vexing question, who the hell is Pat Milton? and why don't you know what she knows? Shouldn't have felt so bad. I had no idea what force I was up against. See, Pat, and many of you know her, Pat had the FBI, maybe I should say had, the FBI and the NYPD wired. In fact, privately, I always suspected that Pat had her own office at 26 Fed. I don't know. In any case, she was an ultra tough competitor. In 2008, how did we counter that? Well, we did the only logical thing. We hired Pat. You know, if you can't beat them, at least have them join you. I competed against her, I worked with her. I can tell you working with her is a much more rewarding experience. Pat and I and others, including my good friend and longtime producer Andy Trier here, teamed up to cover all kinds of stories between 2008 and 2015 when I called it a day. As Susan said, we won the Emmy Award for Boston, the Boston Marathon bombing, and a lot of that was because of Pat's sharp, on-the-nose reporting. She's still breaking stories. I know Susan went through some of the lists that she's done with 60 Minutes, and that prompted my colleague Scott Pelley, one of Pat's current co-workers, to write this letter. And Scott has always made some really, really great points. He writes, "You mean to tell me that the Press Club of Long Island has not inducted Pat Milton into the Hall of Fame until now?" Pelly added, Pat became a Hall of Famer in my book many years ago. In short, Pelly concludes, Pat Milton is my hero. I'll read part of this. This comes from former Congresswoman Carolyn McCarthy, who was referenced earlier. She wrote that she first met Pat as a reporter, didn't know her from any other reporter, and it was under the worst of circumstances. But she said that it was Pat's compassion during her worst night that led to a lifelong friendship. And this is what Congresswoman McCarthy wrote. Patricia Ann Milton entered my life on December the 7th, 1993, the night that my husband Dennis was killed and our son Kevin critically injured in the Long Island Railroad shooting. As I stood there, she wrote, in the bitter cold of the hospital, where doctors were still trying to save my son's life, this reporter, Pat, approached me quietly, and she asked me if there was anything she could do for me. 20 years later, Pat asked the same question when she visited Congresswoman McCarthy as she was being treated for cancer in her chemotherapy sessions. They're good pals. As you've heard, Pat has gold standards that every journalist aspires to. The empathy shown to Carolyn McCarthy, the curiosity, great sources, and a hunger for the truth. But to me, the one characteristic is Pat's tenacity, always carried out with that same smile and good nature. And that's what makes her a Hall of Famer. I'll sum it up this way. In pursuit of a story, Pat Milton, and you probably know this, can be relentless. During one of the high-profile stories that Pat and Andy and I and others from CBS were covering, a senior FBI official called me, and he was desperate. He said, I have to tell you, one of your reporters is driving me crazy. You really need to help me, and I'll make you a deal. I'll tell you anything that you want to know. Just please get Pat Milton to stop calling. And that, in one sentence, is why I admire her so. So please welcome your new Hall of Fame honoree, and my good friend, Patty.
Thank you so much. It's a great honor. I feel privileged and I'm humbled to be here. I'm especially excited about returning home to Long Island to see the people and places that will play such a great part in my life and still have a special place in my heart. I want to thank the Press Club of Long Island and the board, and especially the great David York, for spearheading my nomination for the Hall of Fame. It means the world to me to be recognized by an organization that does so much to promote quality journalism on Long Island. I would not be standing here tonight if it wasn't for the awesome love and support of my parents and my late husband, Roy, who was an outstanding journalist and my big fan, and my brother, John, who flew up here tonight from Charleston, South Carolina to be with me. In fact, he's always been there for me. And I'm also grateful to my wonderful niece, Sarah. She's also here. A big thank you as well to all my colleagues in the news. People I've admired and respected, even as we competed for stories. To the amazing people I've had the privilege to cover, thank you for the trust you've placed in me to report your stories honestly and fairly. Over the decades, I've been fortunate to work with top-notch journalists at the Associated Press and now at CBS News. I am so grateful and honored that many of them are here tonight. I'm especially honored that Susan Zirinsky, the new president of CBS News, has graced us with her presence. She is a bundle of energy and affectionately known as Z. She is passionate about news and ethical to the core. Edward R. Murrow and Walter Cronkite are surely smiling down on her tonight. I'm also grateful to have with us the illustrious Bob Orr, in my book, one of the greatest network correspondents ever, and CBS News rock star producer Andy Trier, as well as the talented Chloe Ahrensberg and one of the best broadcast writers in the business, Jerry Cipriano. I'd also like to thank my former colleagues at the Associated Press. Love you guys. Larry Neumeister, Larry McShane, Sam Mall, Frank Elkman, and Lucas Alpert. A real big salute to Rita Cioli, Pat Dolan, Robert Garrity, John Rather, and Carl Grossman. And to my friends and colleagues, Sarah Fitzpatrick, Valerie Ciani, and Mary Shea. Congratulations to my fellow honorees. We're not only colleagues, but we're friends. In fact, I was Carol Silva's high school swim coach for 4 years. He was a great freestyler, and our team won the New York State Championships 6 years in a row. This year, we're celebrating the bicentennial of one of Long Island's most famous homegrown journalists, the great poet Walt Whitman. He was a member of the inaugural class of the Press Club of Long Island Hall of Fame. Whitman was born in Huntington 200 years ago last week. One of the most famous poems begins, "I celebrate myself and I sing myself." Well, I don't even like to talk about myself, but my job is talking about and writing about other people. But I still will tell you that like Whitman, I was born on Long Island, in Roslyn, and grew up in Westbury. And as they say, ink was in my veins. My parents and my grandfather were in the newspaper business. In fact, my mother and dad met at the now defunct New York Daily Mirror, back when the city was home to 9 daily newspapers. My dad was a young U.S. Army officer who landed on the shores of Normandy in the days following D-Day and took part with the 4th Infantry Division in the liberation of Paris. He later owned a weekly newspaper on Long Island. He was part of the greatest generation. The news was always discussed at our family dinner table. My parents encouraged my brother and I to watch the evening news with Walter Cronkite on CBS, of course. Fresh out of college, I set out to pursue my dream, a job in journalism. It wasn't easy for a young woman looking for a job in a male-dominated business. The Associated Press wouldn't even give me a job application. But persistence paid off, and I soon landed a job at the AP, first as a researcher, and then as a reporter in the New York Bureau, where I began on the overnight shift, midnight to 8 a.m. I was one of 2 women among some 70 newsmen in the Bureau. My first story was covering a terrorist bombing at the United Nations. What a thrill to see my byline, Patricia Milton, at the top of the story that ran on the worldwide AP wire. I was smitten. I would often come into the office in my days off, pleading for stories to cover. Soon I was writing sports as well, but the sports editor changed my byline. He said no one would read a sports story if it carried a woman's byline. And it was my first major exclusive interview, which was with Yankee boss George Steinbrenner, that carried the byline, Pat Milton. And how lucky was I when the AP assigned me to open the first bureau on Long Island. It was a gift to be assigned to cover my hometown for a worldwide news organization. I cherish the memories of the time spent with my colleagues, crammed into the little press room in Mineola Courthouse. We covered it all: tales of heartbreak and happiness, suburban lust and crime, culture, controversy, life and death, including the Long Island Railroad Massacre, the Battle of the Shoreham Nuclear Power Plant, the kidnapping of Katie Beers, And of course, the antics of cheating husband Joey Buttafuoco. Of the hundreds of stories I've covered as an investigative reporter for the AP, CBS News, and 60 Minutes, the most compelling was right here on Long Island, the crash of TWA Flight 800 in the summer of '96. I was sent to the scene off the South Shore of Long Island an hour after the crash, and I stayed 14 months. I felt driven to solve the mystery, not just for the public, but for the families of the victims who died. Because this was a story not about a plane crash. It was a story about 230 souls who lost their lives and the loved ones they left behind. Tonight, in a special way, we remember the sacrifices and triumph of D-Day, which changed the course of history. We hold close to our hearts those who gave their lives and those who survived on the beaches of Normandy exactly 75 years ago today. We cherish their courage and bravery and unyielding spirit as they fought to preserve all freedoms, including our precious First Amendment. Our mission as reporters is to dig for the truth with every tool in our arsenal, and that includes compassion. Finding the truth is more difficult than ever, but we must never give up the pursuit. Whenever I've been turned down by someone for an interview, I've never considered their no an answer. To me, it was just the first round of the negotiation. And at a time when the press is under fire with allegations of fake news, we must be more diligent than ever to get the story right. That's straight out of the AP playbook. Get it first, but first, get it right. Our credibility as reporters is on the line. Without it, we have nothing. Trust is crucial to any relationship. As a journalist, there is no greater virtue. Our democracy depends on it. The stakes are high. For me, journalism has never been just a job. It's a calling, a lifelong vocation. God has blessed me with this magnificent gift that keeps on giving. I've enjoyed a front row seat to history while collecting a paycheck, when I would surely do it for nothing. I hope Z didn't hear that. Thanks again to all for your kindness and support. And again, thanks to the Long Island Press Club and my family, my friends, and my colleagues for being here to share this joyful moment with me. As Walt Whitman wrote, "To be with those I like is enough. I do not ask any more delight." Thank you.